Let me see. Hi everyone, it's Louise Drake. Welcome back to my channel. So today we are talking temperature blankets. Now these are really divisive in the crafting community that just find the idea of a temperature blanket just a little bit overwhelming and they're just not really sure where to start. I've decided to start a new temperature blanket that's a little bit different. So towards the end of the video, I'll be telling you all about how I'm going to start that project and how you can follow along with me. So I did a temperature blanket back from 2019 to 2020. While I was working on it, I put a little bit out on social media. This week I decided to make a TikTok and Instagram reel of my finished blanket and it went crazy. So I know it's something that you guys are looking for and I just wanted to share how I went about it. These are my top 10 tips of how to start and finish a temperature blanket. So first off, what is a temperature blanket? So a temperature blanket is a record of the temperatures throughout a year. So you allocate a colour to a specific temperature and then depending on what the temperature is outside, that is the colour that you use for an entire year. So you do one square or stripe every day for a year. I know that sounds a bit confusing, but we will break it down. So this is my temperature blanket and I am so pleased with it. That's why I've decided to start making another one. So I absolutely love the mixture of colours, how it's not too bright in your face and definitely easy to have in my house. Now it's finished, it lives on our sofa and it gets used all the time. I am very glad that I started it. So if you're thinking about starting one, just do it. The first step when starting a temperature blanket is to choose your pattern. So once you've decided if you're going to knit, crochet, cross stitch or sew, first of all you need to decide what your pattern is going to be. At the end of the day, and I'm going to say this tons in this video, you will keep this blanket and have it in your house. You've got to think, do I like the end product and will I want to display it? Because once you've put in a year's worth of work, you're not going to want to fold it up and put it in a cupboard and never look at it again. Some people do one line for every day of the year, so they end up with one big long stripy blanket. I did granny squares, crocheted. I've seen people creating corner to corner ones, squares, one for every month. People who are sewing quite often do log cabin. There are tons of different ways that you can do it, but you just need to decide which way works for you. When I started, I had a look on Pinterest, do some research of temperature blankets to see what other people are doing, and then you can look through and see which ones you like and which ones you think you'll enjoy making. So I decided to use a pattern that uses 3 colours each day. The centre colour is the lowest temperature from that day. The second row is the highest temperature from that day. And then the grey around the edge is a colour that I use to border each square to give it a bit of definition. In my blanket as well, I also put a blank square between each month and at the beginning and the end of my project. Mostly so that it made my blanket a logical shape. Not only does it break up how the blanket looks and gives your eyes a bit of a rest in between, it also allows me to figure out which day is which. So the second thing to do is to plan your year. So the first thing to decide is when you're going to start your blanket. A lot of people do January to January, so they'll get a full 2020 or 2021 year blanket. For me, I did from my birthday to my birthday. So I did from my 29th birthday through to my 30th. Some people as well do a baby's first year. They gift it to the baby on their first birthday, which I think is a really, really cute idea. A lot of people think they have to do January to January. So if you come across a temperature blanket pattern that you like, say in February, you think, oh, I have to wait all the way until January, and then chances are you're never going to do that project. So just pick a date and get started. You can also backdate temperature blankets. Now I'm just about to start another temperature blanket and I'm not going to be doing it with temperatures that are live from today. I'm going to be doing it from the year 2009 to the year 2010. I know that sounds weird, but my original temperature blanket was from my 29th birthday to my 30th. So I decided I was going to do my 19th birthday to my 20th to see if the temperatures changed that drastically in a decade. And then when I turn 39, my plan is to do another one. The third thing to do is figure out your temperature increments. So this will be different depending on where you are in the world and also if you're using centigrade or Fahrenheit. So the best thing to do when you start is look at last year's average temperatures for your country. And from that, you'll be able to see what the lowest temperature was and what the highest temperature was. So once you have a rough idea of how your temperature is going to span, you need to figure out how many colours you think you're going to use and then split that temperature gauge into smaller increments. So I split my temperatures up into 3-degree increments and I used 13 colours. I also decided to do a high temperature plus and a low temperature minus. I'm going to pop my gauge just here. I'm going to put a photo of the one I actually scribbled all over and then a computerized version so that you can see it a little bit more clearly. So I had -6 and below and 28 plus. Obviously if you want to keep going below or above you can, but just bear in mind it is going to push the price of your yarn up because you'll be adding more colours. So step 4 is to pick which colours you're going to use. So when temperature blankets first started years ago, most people just used a really bright rainbow, so real primary colours. Then I think people realised that whichever blankets they made throughout the year had to live in their house afterwards. There are now tons of people that have come along and done really creative things with different blankets. Pastels, I use like a darker, richer rainbow, but some people just pick one colour and do it ombre, pick lots of different shades of the same colour. I've seen some absolutely beautiful ones that are black through to white with all the greys in the middle. Now traditionally hotter colours are warmer colours and then cooler colours are colder. It means that reds, oranges and yellows go for the warmer temperatures and then blues and whites generally go to the cooler. As long as you pick your own colours and you stick with them, it's your blanket and you can do it however you'd like. So one thing to bear in mind when you're picking your colours is to make sure that all of your colours go together. At any point you can have any colours touching. It's a really great idea to lay all your colours out and just make sure that tonally it does all work. Sometimes you might have a really strange clash of colours which sometimes look nice but sometimes just might make your eyes a bit sad when you're looking at 365 versions of it. So it's definitely worth bearing in mind. The 5th thing you need to do is buy your yarn. Now as a business owner I get people coming into my craft shop all the time asking me how much yarn they're going to need, and the real answer is I don't know. I can't tell what the temperature is going to be. When I started I bought 1 ball of each colour and I used 6 of my grey, so the neutral colour that goes in between. Like I said, it will vary depending on the temperatures, but it will also vary depending on your patterns. I would say to definitely make sure you have at least 1 ball of every colour before you start, because if a colour gets discontinued then you're going to be absolutely stuck if you're 6 months in and you don't have the colour that you need. For me the greens and the yellows go from 4 degrees up to 15 degrees, so I knew being in the UK that is going to be the average temperature for most of the year. Those are the colours I use the most and I bought 2 balls of all of them. Another thing with colours is to bear in mind that you can add them throughout the year at the top and the bottom of your range. You can't do that so well in the middle of your chart, but it is definitely possible at the bottom and at the top to add new colours if you find the temperature is varying too much. So this is one of the most important things to do once you've bought your yarn, is to keep a record of the brand, the type, the colour, the shade number and the lot number. There is nothing worse than getting towards the end or somewhere in the middle of a project and not having enough yarn or fabric to get that project finished. So once you've decided on your pattern, your temperature increments and which colours you're going to use, step 6 is to start creating your chart. This will vary slightly depending on which pattern you've chosen. So your chart will be your absolute definitive guide to which temperatures you need to use on which day. So a lot of people just create a really simple spreadsheet or use a calendar even, and then on every day write down the temperature from that day. For me, because I was doing squares, I had to figure out a way to make my squares fit into a logical shape. So I did that from the beginning. I would make sure I was attaching all of my squares to each other in the right order, and then I used that to write down my temperatures on top of it. I know that sounds confusing. I'll show you what it looks like. So this is the layout I used for my blanket. It ended up being 19 across by 20 squares down. My method was to crochet the squares together as I went, so I didn't get to the end of the year and have 365 squares that I suddenly needed to sew together in the right order and just get confused. By doing it as I went, it made my blanket grow and I could see my progression rather than knowing I still had lots of squares to join together when we got to the end of the year. So this is my actual gauge. It's scribbled all over. It looks like a nightmare, but to me it made complete sense. It's also a great idea to put your temperature gauge on your temperature chart. It makes it so much easier to keep all of the information together so that you know which colours you're using at which point. So the charts and temperature gauge that I've used are on our website, so I will link those down below if you are interested in using the same one as I did, but like I said, make sure whatever you're using is logical for you. Now I say charts plural because the project I'm working on at the moment is a regular year, but the blanket that I have finished from 2019 to 2020 was a leap year. So you just have to be aware that sometimes you might need to allow for an extra day within your pattern depending on which year you're creating for. So once you've picked your colours, you've bought your yarn, you've made your chart, it's time to get started. And my 7th tip is to make sure you have a designated area for your project. It stops you accidentally using your materials that you've designated for your temperature blanket for something else. For me, when I was using my yarn, I had a specific basket that had everything I needed to do my temperature blanket in. I would also suggest keeping any equipment that you're going to use and your temperature chart in with your materials. My temperature chart, my crochet hook, my scissors and my pencil, they all lived in the project basket too. It allows you to know that everything is together, so at any point you can pick up that blanket and you haven't got to go off looking. Also, when you start, you're going to have a lot of materials and very little blanket, but eventually that will shift and you'll end up having a lot of blanket and very little yarn. And if you're like me and you take your projects with you when you travel, or I used to take mine to work when we had our social events, it allows me to just be able to pick up the box, put it in the car and take it straight with me, and I didn't have to worry about if I was missing something important. Tip number 8 is don't worry if you get behind. I can say now with 99.9% certainty you won't do this every single day for a year. And there's absolutely no judgment with that. At one point, I was 93 days behind my project. 93 days. That is a quarter of a year, 3 months. We all go through phases where we absolutely love doing a project and then we fall out of love with it and then we fall back in love with it. It will get finished at some point and nobody's going to look at your blanket and think, oh, that one was done way after it should have been. You just can't tell once it's put together. So don't put any pressure on yourself if you can't get it done. Sometimes it's nice to batch a week together and then sit and have some time for you and get a week's worth done in one go. All I would say is just be aware not to completely stop your project for long periods of time, because after that it is really difficult to get back into the flow. And also, you've already invested the money in the materials. Please don't fall out of love with it or just put it in a box and shove it away and never look at it again. It is such an amazing achievement and it feels so good when you spent a year plus doing a project and it's finally finished. So tip number 9 is to be accountable. Now this kind of ties in with tip number 8. The best thing to do is to start off with the best of intentions. If you want to plan to do it every day or once a week, it's completely up to you, but just make sure your project gets finished. For me, I took my project when we did social event at Sewing Days, so my friends were seeing what I was doing, and that kind of puts like an unofficial pressure onto at some point getting the project finished. Now you might not have crafting friends like I do, but use your internet, social media. There's tons of really great Facebook groups where people share what they've been creating, and I think letting other people know what you're doing might inspire them, because I've had at least 3 friends start a temperature blanket since they saw mine, but also doing it with a friend or knowing that other people are waiting to see how far you're getting is a really good way to keep you on track. I've decided to start my new temperature blanket and put a video out every single day on Instagram and on TikTok to show you guys how achievable it is. And if you want to crochet or create along with me, follow me at the link below and we can do this together. So tip number 10 is a big one. Do not be scared of this project. So many people talk themselves out of starting a year-long project before they even start. They might think they haven't got the time, they'll get bored, they might be worried that they won't like it when they get to the end. All I can say is you're not gonna know unless you try. Remember that this project should be fun. It shouldn't be a chore. Don't put too much pressure on yourself and just enjoy working towards the final product. If you're like me as well, you'll become a bit of a weather geek. So every time the weather changed and I got to start a new colour, it was the most exciting thing in the world. I'd go to my friends and be like, guys, I get to start navy blue today. And they all thought I was ridiculous, just like you do. But once you're down that rabbit hole, you too will get very excited about colours changing. And if that is you, please let me know below that it's not just me. So I hope that's taken a bit of the fear away and given you a good step up of how to start your temperature blanket. Like I said, I am starting a new temperature blanket and I'm going to be doing it every single day for a year. I'm going to hold myself completely accountable. I've started a TikTok channel and an Instagram page just for this blanket. Every day I'll be posting a short video of the square that I have created, and then every so often I'll do updates of a block that I have done. So if you want to follow me along on that journey and even make your temperature blanket along with me, you can follow me just here and we can do this together. If you're planning on starting a temperature blanket, this video has given you some ideas of how to get started. Please let me know below. I would love to see everything that you guys are doing. For now guys, that is a wrap up of this video. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, comment below. I love to hear from you guys, and we'll be back on Tuesday with a new video. Have a good day guys.